Now, America's Federal Aviation Administration has announced that it is extending its ban on flights to and from Tel Aviv for another 24 hours. Today there was no flying. The European Aviation Safety Agency has also recommended airlines to avoid the Ben Gurion airport until, quote, further notice. The announcements come a day after a rocket fired from Gaza landed near the airport. Despite the alert, the US Secretary of State John Kerry did fly into Israel's main airport to seek to negotiate a ceasefire. I'm joined now by our Washington correspondent Kylie Morris. So Kylie, what do you know of all that?
Well, John, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is meeting with John Kerry currently. Of course, they're talking about a ceasefire, but one can only imagine they're also talking about this FAA ban on American airlines flying into Ben Gurion. Now, that as well as a State Department travel ban advising that Americans should avoid travel to Israel has kind of led to a narrative suggesting that this is some kind of American plot designed to pressure Israel into agreeing to a ceasefire. And we know that Benjamin Netanyahu called John Kerry last night to say that that flight ban should be lifted. As far as the State Department's concerned, they're saying, look, they have no influence on the kinds of decisions that the FAA make. There are still flights flying into Ben Gurion. We know that El Al is flying. We know that British Airways is flying. And, of course, one or two military and diplomatic flights as well. No flight ban for the US Secretary of State. John Kerry winged his way into Ben Gurion International Airport with nary a rocket in sight. The Israelis are furious at a State Department travel advisory that Americans don't travel to Israel, as well as the ban on American airlines flying to Tel Aviv. To right the balance, former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg departed New York City bound for Israel on El Al, Israel's national carrier.
What are you trying to prove by going there today?
I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just trying to show that it's safe and it's a great place to visit. And Israel has a right to defend its people, and they're doing exactly what they should be doing.
But John Kerry wants it to stop. In an effort to shepherd through a ceasefire, he met with his Egyptian counterpart 3 times yesterday and has spoken this morning with the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas and Israel's Shimon Peres, as well as Prime Minister Netanyahu himself. The Secretary of State is on a mission. An unguarded moment on the phone to an advisor in the Fox News studios at the weekend revealed his impatience with Israel's so-called pinpoint operations in Gaza.
Yeah, it's a hell of a pinpoint operation. It's a hell of a pinpoint operation.
Right. It's escalating really, significantly, and it just underscores the need for ceasefire.
We've got to get over there.
Yep.
Thank you, John. I think, John, we ought to go tonight. I think it's crazy to be sitting around.
And so today, in the region and on the record, the Secretary of State described prospects for a ceasefire.
And I can tell you that we have, in the last 24 hours, made some progress in moving towards that goal. We will continue in the hopes that before long we can change course, and for everybody's sake.
Finally, after so much death and so much damage, some glimpse of peace. So what kind of a ceasefire is being discussed at the moment? I mean, obviously the details are very sketchy, but it seems to all be heading back toward a ceasefire that was agreed in November 2012. And the bones of that were an immediate cessation of hostilities, lifting on opening of the crossing and allowing free movement of individuals. Now, Hamas would like to tack on to that, lifting the blockade on Gaza and the release of Palestinian prisoners. Now, my understanding of the more general kind of Palestinian position is that there should be a ceasefire followed by 5 days of talks to get to the root causes of the conflict. That was the term that Ban Ki-moon used. Now, this is an absolute noodle soup of diplomacy, be in no doubt. You have the Egyptians, you have the Turks, you have the Qataris, the Israelis, the Palestinians and the Americans, all with their own agendas. There are also real questions being asked about whether the Egyptians are kind of fair brokers in all of this. Of course, this is an Egyptian government which is not supportive of Hamas, as the last one was, and the Israelis themselves seem to have real doubts about the Egyptians as well. So that ceasefire, it may be on the horizon, but it is still some way off.